I'm not making this video because I think it's actually happening. I'm making this video because it's a funny topic, and there was an article that was published on Deadspin which had a whole bunch of people talking about this. So without further ado, let's head over onto Sam Fell's piece from Friday. Is the NHL now rigging games for Connor McDavid? After last night's Oilers win, this was after Game 5, it sure seems that way. Now, I'm gonna go out there and say this: Connor McDavid has been so good, just so astronomically otherworldly, out of this galaxy good, that if you go over to some of the athletic models, you talk about some of the advanced analytics and just discuss how Connor McDavid has been performing, he is performing better in the Stanley Cup Playoffs than he was in the Canadian 2020-2021 division, where he was at almost 2 points a freaking game. This version of Connor McDavid, even if you just disregard the points, we're not talking only about points, we're talking about expected goals, possession metrics, all the stuff he does in the offensive zone. This version of Connor McDavid is one of the best hockey players this league has seen. And I know you could say, oh, Draisaitl has the same amount of points, so Draisaitl is also on that same level. Again, it's not just about the points. This guy, Connor McDavid, is doing so well that every time he plays out there on the ice, the Oilers get exponentially better, the opponents get exponentially worse, and the magnitude as to which that factors into the gameplay is a magnitude that we have not seen out of any other NHL player in decades. So for Connor McDavid, he's so good that it's kind of funny that we're seeing articles now talking about whether or not the NHL is rigging games for him. His greatness, how good Connor McDavid is so vast that now people are questioning if it's even fair. That's how good this guy is, and it's why I wanted to make this video. So let's go over onto the Deadspin article, because this did indeed cause a huge ruckus for people responding to hockey writing media online. Is the NHL now rigging games for Connor McDavid? The first line says, okay, obviously not, but maybe? That has always been the perception about the truly transcendent from us plebs. Tom Brady gets every pass interference and roughing the passer call. Michael Jordan could draw a foul by just looking at the lane. The next example is kind of explicit, so I'm not going to say that, but when you have guys that are just so good, sometimes opposition and fans of the opposition can feel like those guys are getting special treatment. But for Connor McDavid, it's kind of difficult, because if you really wanted to say the NHL's rigging games for McDavid, the big thing you have to go over is the reception that we had in the regular season. Because for the longest time now, we had this idea of Connor McDavid that just said, even though he is really good, and granted, throughout previous regular seasons he was not as good as he is now, he was never really able to get the best treatment out there from referees and officials, mostly because there would be penalties, infractions, and high sticks, trips there on this guy that wouldn't get called. So much to the point that we had Oilers fans saying for years that, hey, Connor McDavid is one of the more mistreated players in the NHL because he doesn't get any calls. He waltzes around the offensive zone and he gets hacked and slashed to no end. But the amount of penalties this guy calls is not all too great. This is a conversation you've heard before, right? Why is Connor McDavid so gosh darn good, but he gets so many infractions committed against him that don't get called? That's unfair, that's not fun, and it makes a lot of Oilers fans pissy at the referee staff, because it's been a pattern that we have seen throughout different parts of McDavid's career over the past 7 years, pretty much. Going back over to the Deadspin article, the NHL has resisted the idea of an NHL star just being so favored that it's made their playoffs an atmosphere that was even harder for the game's biggest stars to shine, as the referees always had their whistles in their lower intestine come the spring. That's changed this time around, and not only for McDavid, but McKinnon, Stamkos, Kucherov, Gaudreau, not enough though, amongst others who have gotten to take over playoff games, if not entire series. It's made for a far more watchable playoff bracket too. That's also been a pattern that we've seen this year's playoffs, that, hey, there's just a lot more calls, and the referees are really controlling these games a lot more than they had been in previous years. The reputation, they put their whistles away in the playoffs. Hey, this year, it's not like that. And so I think that this is a lot more of a product of circumstance in the NHL that we are just seeing happening right in front of our eyes, and we had seen this happen ever since Game 1 of the first round. The whistles are just getting blown a little bit more. And when you have Connor McDavid just taking his game to an even better level than we had seen before, that, combined with our previously established point, makes it seem a lot more like the referees are calling things more for the Oilers and you're having more power plays, this and that. Although I know I'm kind of missing the point, am I? This article is not talking about refereeing, it's not talking about Connor McDavid drawing penalties, etc. It's talking about that recent goal from Blake Coleman. Now, I'm gonna go out there and say the same thing I said in the previous video. I just don't know what to think. It's really tough to come to a conclusion here because if Blake Coleman had not kicked the puck in, it would have gone in. However, when he did make contact with the puck, he was in the process of stopping with his inner foot, which caused the puck to get directed into the net in a manner that was separate from how it was already going into the net beforehand. There was that one angle of the camera being above the Flames bench, I believe. It was somewhat of an overhead angle that kind of sold me on the idea of the puck getting kicked in, but either way, it's a really tough call to make, and at the end of the day, the Flames still lost 4-1 in the entire series, so it's not really like they're the sole reason why the Flames lost. The article then goes over into an entire thing saying, okay, look, the Flames were not great themselves, Markstrom was not great, you had Tanev playing injured, and it was not fun for a lot of the Flames players doing their thing. That's the thing about playoff hockey, as the media loves to glorify players suiting up when they clearly shouldn't be, even if they can't really do anything. And players are terrified of giving in to their injuries, and you wonder why the league and the sport has a problem with speaking up about anything. So at the end of the day, this article isn't really about straight up just the NHL rigging it for McDavid. It's just a lot more about, hey, Connor McDavid's really good. He happens to be just this otherworldly player who happened to get a great call from the referees, which is why they won game number 5, or excuse me, why they didn't lose game 5 in regulation, and how no one's as fast as McDavid, who either beat those defensemen high up the ice clean or pushed them back to have all the space he needed to get into the neutral zone. Even when McDavid wasn't on the ice and with Tanev's injury, the Calgary blue line was so scarred they were still backing up and providing the Oilers space. The Oilers aren't particularly good, and Smith was only less bad than his counterpart, but none of it matters because McDavid, with some help from Draisaitl, he can't be stopped. And if it happens to cast the officials under a spell while he's at it, well, it only makes him one of those truly historic players for sure. Now, this article will be linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. I don't really think there's too much of a different idea that's been brought up here that we haven't already discussed about, but I do think it was kind of funny just seeing everybody online react to, oh, McDavid getting games rigged against him, or for him, excuse me, by the NHL because they want the Oilers to win. I mean, come on, it's Edmonton, isn't it? I will say, though, at the end of the day, whether or not it is Connor McDavid that plays off against Tampa Bay or Carolina or New York in the Stanley Cup Finals, this is an opportunity for not only the NHL, but for the NHL and its partners, for the media organizations to go out there and promote the hell out of this guy, because, as we said, this is the best hockey performance we have seen by one individual player in such a gosh darn long time that it's kind of great that this is happening at the same time as TNT starting things up for the National Hockey League, as the first round of the NHL playoffs has the best viewing rate in the past few years, or what is it, all time, something like that. It's a crazy just quantity of people that are watching hockey compared to before. So now is the time, right? Now is the time to go out there and promote the hell out of the best player in the world, going off against one of the second or third best players in the NHL in Nathan MacKinnon, with other top 10 NHL talents in Draisaitl and Makar also suiting up in that series as well. This is that star-studded series, and as I said in the preview, we haven't had something like this in such a long time. It's been like 20 years since those Detroit and Colorado series where all the star power was just so strong on either end. This is it. And it's going to be fun. Game 1 is tomorrow, is it? I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch it because there's drop-in hockey again at a local high school for one of the leagues that I play in, so I'm not really too sure what I'm going to do there, but you can let me know in the comments all your thoughts about this idea of Connor McDavid and the Oilers, whether or not NHL games are getting rigged for Connor. whether or not that's just a product of the officials in this year's playoffs being a lot more harsh on their calls, or if there's something at play here that is beyond the modern comprehension of the game. Link in the description to the article. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9, and bye.